Hey everybody, this is Mr. Munson and welcome. I'm glad you're here. Today we're going to go through our vocabulary words for Unit 0. Now your sheet might be like mine and say Unit 1 at the top, so let's go ahead and put a Unit 0 there. And so what ends up happening is you have a front side and a back side to each sheet. Over on the back side of this first sheet, you should see the word either term or word and phrase. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to introduce, on the front side, I'm going to introduce some words to you. You'll see like blank lines here with a letter. And that is where I'm going to be writing in the words. I don't want you to write them there. Actually, I want you to write them on the back next to or in line with the line that we're working with. So what ends up happening is if you write them back there and you leave the front blank, then what can happen is you'll read the first part and say, in a geometry, a blank is undefined. What's the word that starts with P? And then you have to think about it, and that letter P helps prompt. And if you say point, then you can go to the back side and see, oh yeah, it is point. Or if you're stuck, you could go back there and look. Now, what you might want to do right off the bat is take the paper and fold it down the middle here so that you have that back side laying over the front side. And then you just write the word in down as I'm talking about it. Now, sometimes I'm going to write notes and stuff over on this side or inside the boxes, and you just add those. But try to leave the vocabulary words blank. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first word that we're going to learn is the word point. So the word point is undefined. I mean, I have no definition for it. We just have to assume that you know what it means. I mean, you probably have a good idea what a point is. You've learned it in other classes. But we're going to say a point is undefined, which means it's assumed you understand what it is without me writing down a definition. You can think of a point as a location. A point has no side. This is the notation that I would write down if I wanted you to go find point P. Next up is line. In geometry, a line is undefined as well. It contains an infinite number of points. You can think of it as a straight path that extends in two opposite directions. The symbol, the notation that we use for a line, in this case we have 2 points on this line that are A and B. We would write down the letters A, B, and then we would draw a line above it. And so that's the notation for line AB. Next up, plane. In geometry, a plane is undefined. You can think of a plane as a flat surface, like a sheet of glass, that extends without ends. It goes on and on forever, has no thickness, and things that lie on that plane say that they're in that plane. And there's lots of things that can lie in that plane. There can be triangles, rectangles, there can be points, lines, and all these different things. This plane right here has some illustrated points, so you have like segment AB or AC, you have line BC. Typically when you have a letter that doesn't have a dot next to it, that's the name of the plane. So the symbols that we'd use for that is we draw a little parallelogram that's leaning over, and we would write that letter, Z. Okay, that's plane Z. Next up, line segment. A line segment is part of a line that consists of 2 points called endpoints, and all points between them. Okay, so line segment DE contains the endpoints DE and all the points in between them, right? But it's part of a longer system called a line segment. A line. In this case, we're only talking about a line segment. The notation for line segment DE would be the letters of the endpoints D and E, and a segment, just a straight line with no arrows on the ends of that. Next up is ray. And again, I'm reminding you, best practice is to write this on the back side of this document instead of on the line like I am, so that you can use it as a check, like a quiz for yourself, because there's nothing written there. A ray is the part of the line that consists of one endpoint and all the points on one side of the endpoint. So this ray, A, B, is the ray that starts at A and goes off in the direction of B. Opposite rays are rays that have the same starting point but go in opposite directions. They basically form a straight line. Collinear points are points that lie on the same line. So point A, B, and C all lie on the same line. Z is not collinear with a segment or with points A and B because they lie on a different line. Now, points A and Z could be collinear because they lie on the same line as AZ. Any 2 points, they're always collinear. It's when you add the third one that determines if you have collinear points. Sorry for that little behind the scenes there. I forgot I was still recording, so gave you an extra minute on this. But anyway, the next up is coplanar. Coplanar are objects that are of the same plane. Postulates. Postulates are statements that we just have to accept are true. We have no proof of them, but it's just so straightforward, we just accept they're true. Here's an example of a postulate. Through any 2 points, there's exactly one line. So if you were to analyze that and think that through, like, let's say I didn't think that was true. Okay, cool. Try to draw more than one line, unique lines, that go through the same 2 points. It's not possible. Theorem. A theorem is a conjecture that isn't just accepted like a postulate is, but it's been proven to be true. Like somebody's written what we call proof, and we will be doing that this year for multiple things. One of the more famous theorems that you've probably already worked with is the Pythagorean theorem, which means that there's somebody out there that's proven that to be true. We don't just accept it, it's actually been proven. Intersecting lines. Intersecting lines are 2 lines that touch each other. They're not parallel, that's different. Parallel lines never intersect each other. Intersecting lines, there's a couple of different ones. They're called oblique, and there's perpendicular lines. We'll study those in a bit. But right now, just know that when I use the word intersecting lines, you can imagine 2 lines that meet at a single point. Next up, intersecting planes. Intersecting planes are 2 planes that meet. Now, lines meet, when they meet at a point. Planes meet at a line. They intersect when they hit, they actually form a line. So to finish this off, it's basically plane W and plane R intersect at line ST. So we draw a little line above it. The segment addition postulate. It basically states that if you have 3 points, A, B, C, you can look down below there in the drawing, that are collinear, lie on the same line, and B is between them, not necessarily in the middle, it could be, but it doesn't have to be, then the segment A to B plus B to C creates a longer segment that we would call A to C. So the notation that we use to represent the word distance between a couple of points is this notation. Remember, nothing written above it. The line that contains AB is written like this with a line above it. And the segment AB is written like this with a segment above it. No arrows on the end. The distance formula. The distance formula is written here in this line, okay? And the x and y represent the x and y between 2 points. So if I gave you 2 points, like 3, 2 and 4, 0, and said, hey, what's the distance between those 2 points? Then you would take the x's and plug them in for the x's. And then you take the y's and plug them in for the y's. Here's another way to find the distance between 2 points. It's using the Pythagorean theorem. So if I was looking for the distance of AB, then what I would do is find the distance of AC and square it, and find the distance of BC and square it, add those together, and that would give me AB squared. So I'd have to take square root of both sides to find out actually how long AB is. And that's something that we're going to touch on a little bit longer. So if you don't remember the Pythagorean theorem or didn't ever get a chance to learn it, you'll get a chance. Next up, midpoint. Midpoint of a line is a point that is equal distant from the end points of the line. And I should say line segment, right? A line doesn't have a middle. It goes on in both directions forever. So a midpoint is the halfway point between two endpoints. Now let me just show you some notation here that you should recognize, or if not, learn it this year. The segment, since M is the midpoint, the segment AM going from here to there and the segment MB are the same length. And they mark them with this single slash that tells you that they're congruent to each other, same length. If one's 5 inches long, the other one's 5 inches long. The midpoint formula. Given 2 points, x1, y1, x2, y2, then the midpoint formula can be found by using, finds xm, ym, the coordinates x and m, the midpoint. The letter m designates these as they are the x and y values of the midpoint. So this tells me if I had a point given to me as xm, ym, then I would recognize that as my midpoint. And this is the formula for finding that, and we'll work on that in class as well. Segment bisector is a line segment, a line or segment or ray, or even a plane that intersects a segment at its midpoint, okay? Midpoint's all one word there. So right here is the midpoint, and in this case, I'm showing you a line called L that intersects KJ at midpoint, we'll call it M, midpoint M. And that's it. Put this in your 3-ring binder or whatever device you're keeping these kind of documents in, and I can't wait to see you next time. Take care.